Welcome back to the ticker here on Yahoo Finance. We've been highlighting a way that businesses are planning to reopen as we move along here in the fight against coronavirus. And it's not just small businesses, it's also some major ones, some ones that Americans care deeply about. That would be the major sport leagues around the country. The NBA inching closer reportedly to coming back. There's been no official word from Commissioner Adam Silver, but signs are pointing to a return in games in a matter of weeks, not months. As we get closer to that, there are a lot of questions about the issues that athletes might have in returning to play. And for more on that, I want to bring on our next guest. That would be Brendan Schwab, World Players Association Executive Director. For those of you who don't know, the World Players Association is a leading voice for organized players in leagues that you might have heard of. That would include the players associations belonging to the NFL, the NHL, the MLB, and of course, the NBA. Brandon, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us. Of course, I'm sure athletes have concerns just like all of us do in terms of the health implications of going back to work. So what right now are the major gripes when you talk to athletes worried about getting put in that precarious position?
Well, I don't think the word's gripe, Zack. I think that when we look at what's occurred over the last couple of months, we've had an unprecedented close down of major sports, not just in the United States, but all around the world. And the players have been quick to come to the table on some economic concessions to help save the economic crisis that sport found itself in. And of course, that same economic pressure is now feeding the desire for sport to come back as soon as possible. Certainly those sports that have big broadcast deals and the fans can sit at home and watch those games, even though they can't go into the stadia. So it's really about risk. How do we create a situation where athletes have confidence and trust that what they're being asked to do, of course, is at odds with the message of the last 2 months: social distancing, keep to yourself, yet we're now dealing with contact sports. And for that to occur, the athletes not only need to be satisfied that the protocols about stopping the spread of the virus within the sporting environment are going to be in place, but also in the event that an athlete contracts the virus, contracts the disease, that the athlete will be well treated, that the economic and the legal and the health risk won't be just put onto his or her shoulders, and that they'll be able to safely recover from an illness which we're still learning about.
Yeah, that seems to me to be the most interesting thing here, because you can't really social distance if you're posting up on the block. There's no way you can really be 6 feet away from the other player here. But when you look at it, I guess that is the question of who bears responsibility here when we do put players back into the league and God forbid someone was to contract it and pass it along. What would happen in that instance in terms of lost wages, having to sit out? What's that discussion looking like right now in terms of protecting players versus what the leagues are comfortable with?
Well, there's a different approach being taken all around the world. What we've already seen, for example, in German soccer is they're back and they're playing. And we're now going to see Australian rules football and rugby league in Australia follow suit. We're relatively content that the best public health advice is being listened to, that people in these leagues are listening to the science when it comes to measures to prevent the spread of the virus. And should an athlete contract it in terms of quarantining, all that emphasis is in place. But we're still dealing with a disease that people don't fully know how to treat. We're seeing, for example, that certain groups are more vulnerable to the virus, people with a high body mass index, be rugby, NFL players, people from certain backgrounds and ethnicities. And we still don't know. So what we need to make sure is that the athletes, some of them may want to choose whether to come back or not. And if they've got a genuine view that it's unsafe for them to do so, then in these circumstances, that should be accepted.
Yeah, it seems tricky to be in a position like the one you're in here, because it seems like it would be players have different stances here, whether or not they're more afraid of the health implications versus wanting to get back and competing, since we are dealing with some of the highest form of competition here. What are you seeing in terms of maybe the relative breakdown and the percentage of players that fall in one camp versus the other in terms of, let me please get back out there for, the love of all that's holy. I need to get back to my sport, versus I'm very worried?
I think that, where the athletes are well informed, they understand both sides of the coin. I think in the main, the athletes overwhelmingly want to get back and play. They understand the economic pressures. They understand the important social role that sports play, and they're very dedicated to their profession. But at the same time, we need to make an informed decision. And so there's 5 or 6 key issues which are becoming common throughout all of the negotiations around the world. The first is that this is a public health crisis. We don't want sport to contribute to the worsening of the pandemic. The second is the specific health issues associated with COVID-19 need to be managed. And another important one is sport is, of course, inherently risky as it is. And you've seen, for example, in National Football League, the issue of concussion and how much work has gone into managing an important health and safety issue such as concussion. Those issues exist in a whole variety of ways throughout sport, throughout the world, and we need to make sure that the rush to come back to play whilst dealing with COVID-19 does not exacerbate those other health and safety essentials which need to be in place.
Yeah, very important note there, especially when you think about how much is unknown about concussions and the health risk around that. Much more still seemingly unknown about coronavirus as well. But Brandon Schwab, World Players Association Executive Director, appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today.
Thank you, Zack. Appreciate it.
Hey, investors. Zack Guzman here. Are you interested in learning more about the markets and getting the latest financial news? Well, then click right here to subscribe to our Yahoo Finance YouTube channel. Get the latest up-to-the-minute market analysis, big interviews in the world of finance, and information on how to manage your money every day wherever you are.